This conference will now be recorded.
Salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome everybody. The first item of business this evening is a public hearing with respect to local law number 1 of the year 2021. And I'll ask Anita, as our village clerk, to read the notice of the public hearing.
Notice is hereby given that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Lake Placid will hold a special board meeting on Monday, March 29th, immediately following the 5 p.m. public hearing by a go-to meeting for the following purposes. I'm sorry, I'm reading the public notice for the meeting and not for the local law. My apologies.
It's a good dry run, though.
Yes. I need to find that here now. I'm sorry.
Liz probably has it. It's in the paper.
Yeah, probably. I'm the one who has to read it. Okay.
Is it it's not effective one?
It was not in the packet.
Okay, I have it now. It's rather long. Please take notice that for the purpose of adopting a codification of the local laws and ordinances of the Village of Lake Placid, said codification to be known as the Code of the Village of Lake Placid, a public hearing will be held by the Board of Trustees via go-to meeting on the 29th day of March 2021 at 5 p.m. to consider the enactment of the proposed local law, described and summarized below. Proposed local law number 1, 2021. A local law to provide for the codification of the local laws and ordinances of the Village of Lake Placid into a municipal code to be designated the Code of the Village of Lake Placid. This local law, 1, states the legislative intent of the Board of Trustees in adopting the code. 2, provides for the designation of the local laws and ordinances of the Village of Lake Placid as the Code of the Village of Lake Placid. 3, repeals local laws and ordinances of a general and permanent nature not included in the code except as provided. 4, saves from repeal certain local laws and ordinances and designates certain matters not affected by repeal. 5, retains the meaning and intent of previously adopted legislation. 6, provides for the filing of a copy of the code in the village clerk's office. 7, provides for certain changes in or additions to the code. 8, prescribes the manner in which amendments and new legislation are to be incorporated into the code. 9, requires that code books be kept up to date. 10, provides for the sale of code books by the village and the supplementation thereof. 11, prohibits tampering with code books, with offenses punishable by a fine of not more than $250 or by imprisonment for not more than 15 days or both. 12, establishes severability provisions with respect to the code generally. 13, provides that the local law will be included in the code as Chapter 1, Article 1. Copies of the local law described above and of the code proposed for adoption thereby are on file in the office of the village clerk of the Village of Lake Placid, where the same are available for public inspection during regular office hours. Please take further notice that all interested persons will be given an opportunity to be heard on said proposed local law at the place and time aforesaid. Notice is hereby given pursuant to the requirements of the Open Meetings Law of the State of New York that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Lake Placid will convene in public meeting at the place and time aforesaid for the purpose of conducting a public hearing on the proposed local law described above and, as deemed advisable by the Board, taking action on the enactment of said local law. Dated March 15, 2021, by order of the Board of Trustees, Village of Lake Placid, signed Anita Estling, Village Clerk.
Thank you, Anita.
You're welcome.
With the reading of the notice, this public hearing is declared open, and we invite comments from Anyone attending, either in person or virtually via Zoom? Um, Janet, would you like to make any comments about the nature of this?
Well, Anita just said it all. Basically, it's been a work in progress for many, many years. And what this will do is it'll put all of our local laws in one place for easy reference. It also will, the local laws will be on the general code website, so anybody can see them. They'll be on our website. And it just makes for ease, because our local laws right now, as everybody knows, are kind of scattered. Some of these local laws go back, 50 years. And it'll be also facilitate any updates as local laws get amended or new local laws get added to the books. I would point out that part of this that we did leave out, even though it is a local law, is our zoning and land use code. That is not part of what we're doing here. That's not part of going into general code. We left that out. So that is not in here. That's still a separate living, breathing document.
Thank you, Janet. At this point, does anyone wish to express questions or concerns or recommendations? Going once, going twice.
And you don't think anybody would have gone to the town hall, do you?
I mean, I thought we made it pretty clear that it's on go-to meeting.
And
They were not supposed to show up live anyway, they should show up
This would
here.
give people enough time if they did go to come here, yeah.
Yeah.
We can remain open for a couple of minutes if that's everybody's wish. This is a pretty significant piece of work, but in reality it is simply, as Janet has stated and the clerk's notice stated, it's simply consolidating all of our local laws in one very organized document that can be accessed easily by the public in the future, as well as anyone on this board or future village boards. And I can say that once it's completed, it becomes a wonderful reference tool for those of us that have to work with it. And there's hardly a week that goes by that we don't open up the binder and look at our one local law or another, and sometimes more than one. I think the other thing that I noticed the general code was able to do is that in many cases they clarified language that so that it's I want to say matched or consistent with New York State, and that was one of the things I noticed quite frequently through here. So it basically brought our codes up to standards that compare with the state.
Craig, can you go to an online site and type in the subject matter of police, let's say, and it'll come up with only those local laws related to police?
General code has that. General code is pretty good, yes.
You go to general code website then? And
So it's a search engine.
No, I don't think
No, you
there's,
don't need
I think for us to do administrative things, there'll be a password, but I think for the general public, they can get on and just
you
search.
can go.
I've never tried it.
Yeah, I'll share with all of you once we're all up and running.
What this also does is it behooves us to keep this up to date, which means that at least on an annual basis, I believe there'll be a review, and any changes in our local laws will be presented to general code to be incorporated into this codification. Okay, well, it's now 5:10 p.m. There've been no public comments offered at this point, and absent any input from the public, I will declare this public hearing closed. And I'll ask the clerk to now read the notice of the special board meeting that was called this afternoon.
Notice is hereby given that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Lake Placid will hold a special board meeting on Monday, March 29th, immediately following the 5 p.m. public hearing via go-to-meeting for the following purposes. Local Law 1/2021, a local law to provide for the codification of the local laws and ordinances of the Village of Lake Placid into a municipal code to be designated the Code of the Village of Lake Placid. Number 2, Village Police Reform and Reinvention Plan. Number 3, FISU University Games Agreement Discussion. Number 4, third-party agreement for federal 5311 operating assistance with Essex County. Dial-in information will be provided on the Lake Placid Village website and Facebook page. Signed, Anita A. S. Lane, Village Clerk, March 26, 2021.
Thank you, Anita. The first topic of business, and we're restricted by the nature of a special board meeting and its notice to just the topics that are on the agenda under section 3 of the agenda. And the first item is item A, which is to take up and consider passage and approval of local law number 1 of 2021. For the sake of the record, that is the local law that we just completed the public hearing on, there being no public comments added to the record.
So moved.
Second?
Art moves, Peter seconds. Is this a roll call vote, Janet?
No.
No, okay. All in favor of passage of local law number 1, representing codification of our local laws as described by Anita and Janet by general code, say aye.
Aye.
Any negative? Any abstentions? Okay, local law number 1 of 2021 only took 10 years to pass. But a lot of work has been done on it in the meantime. And I might add, three village clerks had input into the process.
Yeah, I think Cook and I kind of bookended it. Clerk Clark definitely spent a lot of time on it.
She did. She did.
You'll let her know.
Yes.
Okay, the next item we have on the agenda is consideration and acceptance or acceptance with modification of the Village Police Reform and Reinvention Plan as required by Executive Order 203 of Governor Como. I believe you've all had an opportunity to consider what is referred to as the final plan, although it's not final until it's been considered by this board and adopted. And upon its adoption, it will be then submitted to the New York State Office of Budget, who is receiving all of these from any municipality or city in the state of New York that has a law enforcement unit. This has been assembled with assistance from our chief of police, an assistant chief, Chuck Dobson, Chief Moore, and Assistant Chief Dobson just walked in. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening.
We were in a
Yes.
different venue. We thought it was at the other, we were waiting in the meeting room.
Sorry.
We received outside assistance from a consulting firm that specializes in this type of work, and that was a consulting firm known as Olio Consulting, the principal being Teresa Wilson, who's their chief executive officer. This document has, and although it may seem to us as board members that this was just 27 pages, I think it's fair to say, and Scott probably would confirm it, that this required a review of all of the operating policies of the department, especially focused on areas where there might be or could be considered systemic racism or discrimination. or use of force. I'm happy to say that in the 12 years that some of us have been around, and 8 for others, I don't believe our police force has, in the line of enforcement, ever discharged a firearm. I believe that they're all equipped with body cameras that are governed by use by policy. They're appropriately equipped with tasers, and I believe the tasers, in the years that they've had access to that resource, have maybe only been used once. Is that correct?
Twice.
Twice. And I might add, just as a reminder to everybody, that before the taser can be used by an officer, they actually endure the experience of being tasered themselves. So they have a good understanding of how that equipment affects you. With that said, the report is in front of you. I think it's pretty straightforward. It does conform with Executive Order 203. I would say that the comments from the public have been very limited, and that may have been a result of the fact that by and large our resources for communication have been via virtual meetings. So there was one in February. There was one reservation, and that could have appeared in person, but elected not to, and there was no further comment from that person. Other than that, there have been, I've had the mayor's office, I've had 2 phone calls, and they have addressed issues that were not germane to the development of this report, given the instructions of Executive Order 203. They were more questions of the size and the budget of the department, which is not the topic that 203 is trying to address. So what we have tonight, absent any further input from the community, is before you to be adopted, should you choose, or to be amended and adopted, if in fact any of you have further amendments that you'd like to include.
Motion to approve adoption. Second.
Scott, Peter?
Under discussion, I see that Peter Holder's name's above mine. If we can switch that. But I guess for the sake of just brevity, we'll just continue on.
So moved.
With that little bit of brevity recognized, we'll call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
And this is a resolution that's in the packet. I think you all have a copy of the resolution itself. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations. We will, Anita, we will arrange to file this with the budget director so that it's in their hands as of April 1st. I'd like to add just a comment to that. Well, the purposes of 203 were pretty clear and dealt with the use of enforcement mechanisms of a police department and considered the issues of systemic racism or discrimination. I think 203 in itself served a purpose that was driven by events that are certainly going on across the country. And I would say that I would like to see, and this is a recommendation for the community to consider for the future, I think, that systemic racism is not something that is easily identified. It's not necessarily isolated to our police departments, but in fact it can be somebody walking by you on the street and you have no idea what they're thinking. I've had some interesting conversations with a couple of community members, and one in particular has a daughter in school, and the discussion went along the line that systemic racism is a cultural issue like everything else. And I think it would be interesting, and I would challenge our village board that's going to succeed us and our development commission to maybe consider whether or not it would be appropriate to establish a community committee that would focus on systemic racism as a community topic and not necessarily just restricted to law enforcement. Law enforcement may have been the trigger that started the discussion, but it seems to me that we don't know. I can walk down the street and it's easy for me to say I don't harbor any of those type of thoughts, but I think maybe a more active discussion of those topics might be a good topic for any community to take up, but certainly Lake Placid. We welcome the world. We're held on a higher standard many times than most communities, given the nature of our activities, especially when you consider the standards of the Olympic community and once an Olympic city, always an Olympic city. And I think that's a high standard, and I think we should continue to make sure that we sustain ourselves in that manner. It was just this weekend that we were recognizing the state's 125-year operation of John Brown's farm. We all know what John Brown represented. I think it's an activity that I believe our community is proud of. But having said that, we are a community like any other community where I think our culture would be improved if we had better understandings of what exactly represents systemic racism or discrimination. So I leave that challenge for a future board and our development commission to consider whether that would be appropriate or not for the community to do. Does any trustee wish to comment on that?
I think it's a fantastic idea, and I agree 100% regarding having a conversation, especially Lake Placid, because from my perspective, we are much different from our surrounding communities, and we are held to a much higher standard because we invite the world over and over again into our community.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once? Okay, we'll move on to item C. Janet, do we have?
I think, is that Jim McKenna on?
I think it's Jackie Kelly.
No,
boss.
JBM.
He's using his middle initial, I guess.
Jim, is that you?
Jim, can you unmute?
He's not
He's
muted.
not muted, so maybe it's not Jim.
Is it John Morgan? Is it JFM or J?
JBM.
Okay, it is.
And so, we've been working for several years on was originally titled a Memorandum of Understanding. It's now been retitled as Agreement between ORDA, the village, the Adirondack Thousand Islands Sports and Events Commission, which is also the Adirondack North Country Sports Council, and the United States International University Sports Federation. And the latest version of that agreement came out last week, and I had hoped that by tonight, and that's why I have my phone, because I was getting text messages here from Michelle Crew, who is the lead attorney on this, to say that everybody had agreed to the changes, which quite frankly are not substantive. When you talk about changing it from MOU to agreement, I don't think that's substantive. And the only other change was to give the document, which is to be signed in 2021, an effective date that would date back to 2018, which is when we signed the attribution agreement, because there are several responsibilities in this agreement, the timeline and the time deadlines of which have already passed. I can't sit here and tell you that everybody who needs to has signed off on this. So we have a couple options. The board could approve the signing of this by the mayor. My thought was it would be appropriate and nice if it could be signed by Craig while he's still in office, because he was instrumental in getting this bid. So I could ask for a board approval, and hopefully, say tomorrow, we get the final approval from everybody who has to sign off. I'm quite disappointed that they haven't signed off as of tonight, because I did give everybody notice that we were having a special meeting. But the holdup for about a year on this agreement was the insurance requirements. They had to be reviewed by the state. And basically, it's the responsibility of ORDA to provide most of the heavy lifting under this agreement. The village has really obligated itself just to assist in any way possible, but and to authorize when necessary, and if all of the conditions are met, any permits that might be needed, which I'm not sure that there will be any. So that's it in a nutshell, and I would ask the board to approve the final agreement and authorize the mayor to sign it. In the next 3 days, if it's Mayor Randall, it'll be Mayor Randall. If thereafter, it'll be Mayor
Mayor
Devlin.
Devlin.
Jim's on now as well.
Oh, hey, Jim. He's back in.
You sure our volume's up? We could hear Mindy before, couldn't we?
Can't hear you.
I do look nice tonight, Jim, thank you.
I guess he's giving the thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Okay. Most,
Now he's on the phone, it looks like.
I think he's trying to find the different audio.
Yeah, because we tested it with Mindy and we can hear people.
Mindy, can you hear us? Can you talk?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank
Yep,
you.
thank you.
so for some reason, Jim is muted.
Well, he's not muted, but he's not.
Something on his end, his mic's not turned on.
Well, I'm gonna take the thumbs up, because he was one of the people who had to approve the change. So
Yes,
I'm
yes,
saying-
he's one of the signers on the attribution contract, so,
He's like, I'm just thinking
So I did.
Jen, the attorney mentioned the state attorney.
Michelle, she's the order attorney.
She's ordered.
Yeah, she
I
came
would
over
say,
to
well,
work from the DEC.
that Janet's description that in this agreement, that in the attribution agreement, the village really has a minimal obligation, yet
We're basically obligated to cooperate.
that's correct. We do have, and I'll remind everybody that, because we're already in the third year, the village and the town, and I believe the county are contributing sums of money in the towns and villages.
Oh,
cases.
we got Jim.
Hi, Jim.
It was a bad computer I was on. But I did hear Janet's explanation, and that is correct. The Sports Council, though, does have a big load to carry here. And the Sports Council attorney has gone through it, and I believe, Janet, you've been in touch with Teresa, or I'm not sure. But
Teresa's been on emails, but my conversations have been with Michelle.
Yep.
We did not get a response from Teresa.
Okay, I know Michelle and Teresa has been working on it. I have reviewed it with Teresa, and she has told me I should sign.
So that means the mayor should sign too.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Just to finish the thought, the town and the village are each contributing the amount of $25,000 a year. It's a 5-year.
4 years or 5 years?
5 years. We have done, based on information that I have from our accounting people, we have done 3 of the 5 terms. 2000, I think our first contribution was 2018, 19, 20, which corresponds to 19, 20, and 21 on this agreement, recognizing that our budget year is not calendar year. I think I sent you an email on that, Janet, a while ago. Any other questions on this? The attribution agreement has a ton of responsibilities in it, mostly for the Sports Council and the organizing committee, and of course, ORDA is providing the venues, and there's a significant amount of this agreement that focuses on that.
Speaking of organizing committee, should that have been formed by now?
I can't answer that. Maybe Jim can.
Jim,
What was that question?
organizing committee, is that in the works?
Yes, it is. Ashley Walton, who's the executive director, has really taken full control of that, and she has been moving the organization forward. I believe that if it wasn't planned, that she was going to give the village board a brief in the very near future, but things are certainly in motion. He's been bringing on staff, and everything is in order for the organization of the games, which the Sports Council does have responsibility for. And I'd just like to clarify too, I know there's been a couple of minor changes, Janet, in that, a name and date, and I just want to make sure Teresa's good with that, but I'm sure that it's fine on this agreement.
Yeah, they were really not substantive changes, Jim.
Right.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I would ask for a motion authorizing the village to execute the memorandum of agreement between the New York State Olympic Regional Development Authority, Lake Placid Village Incorporated, Adirondack 1000 Island Sport and Events Commission, known as the Adirondack North Country Sports Council, and the United States International University Sports Federation.
I think I moved it.
You did.
Probably about 10 minutes ago. Getting a little.
Ahead of yourself.
Exactly.
Second, you said for discussion.
Jason motion, Scott has put a second on it.
Barbara, of course.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Excited.
If not, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it, and the village will move forward, and the mayor will execute.
I'll get you the final agreement.
Very well. Okay. The fourth item on the agenda is basically a document that's an agreement between the town the village and Essex County, and it's referred to as a 5311 agreement. This has to do with our public transportation system, which I am happy to say is beginning to operate again in the village after having suspended operations during the worst of the pandemic impacts. This is referred to as a 5311 agreement, and basically this provides the funding, much of the funding for the public transportation system comes in the form of federal and state grants, which are administered through the county. And to that, we supplement sums of money. In this particular agreement that was entered into, let me see if I think I brought, maybe I didn't bring. There was an earlier agreement a while ago. You will notice that this particular agreement actually needs to be executed, is backdated to January 2020. Sometimes these things take a little bit of time to get through the people that have to draft them. In this case, it was being done over at Elizabethtown. The obligations of the village are limited. They're limited to a sum of money not to exceed $75,000 a year. And this is only to keep the county whole. The primary resources come in the form of grant funding that is designed to reflect the number of passengers that are carried from month to month or year to year, and also the number of miles driven. Helps to create that resource. Over and above that, any expenses are shared by are carried by the village. You may recall that we used to budget some $125,000 to $140,000 a year for this. This agreement continues to be capped at $75,000. The last 53 accounting that we had, and I don't know, Mindy, if you have it where you can put your hands on it, but I believe the portion that is represented by the cap at 75 came in at something around 45,000.
I think you're right. I can double check quick though.
Okay. That's just a number that seems familiar to me. Beyond that, any new equipment that's put into the Placid Express system, which would be buses or trolleys or other vehicles, but they are buses or trolleys, the village contributes a local match of 10%. And again, the primary funding of that equipment is grant sourced. So this 5311 agreement in front of you tonight is no different than the first agreement, except that I'm pointing out to you that it should have been signed a year ago.
Craig, it's
Yeah.
40,000.
40,000. I knew the 4 was good. I was being safe by saying 45. Any comments or concerns on this? One of the things that I'm hopeful will happen in the coming months ahead of us, there will be a significant transportation plan developed by the World University Program. First, to move its athletes and the technical people that have to participate in that activity, but also to move the public. They have their own transportation committee, and I believe they're working on that. Jim, I don't know if you can comment on that. I guess he's.
Well, it's waiting for him to load. Are we looking to increase efficiency where maybe like actual geolocators and people?
That has been discussed by in meetings previous to the pandemic. Jim Duggan, who is the responsible person over in Elizabethtown for the operation, has been in meetings with us where they've discussed acquiring that type of equipment. I suspect that given what's developing or will develop in the next 2 years, that we'll perhaps have a pretty good chance of seeing that type of activity. But again, I think for the new board, this should be a topic of trying to see if we can't improve the service. I know at one time the records showed that we had 100,000 passengers. We subsequently discovered that figure was somewhat fungible. we in recent years have been running at about 60 to 65,000 passengers a year. Largely, it supports people without transportation. Greenwood is a very regular stop, but it also supports a good number of workers who are coming in. The good news that it's starting again, the timing couldn't be better because hopefully that will help us with the Main Street traffic rerouting that is, you're beginning to see evidence of the signs on our streets today. And traffic lights. The one at West Valley is actually blinking.
While I ran in, I stopped. I was just like, ooh, okay.
So I think there's a good opportunity in the coming months, and it's been a while since we've had a meeting with the county. I certainly would encourage that to happen and begin the process of seeing maybe how we, I think Ashley may be able to provide some information about what the University Games planners are thinking about.
So I'll have, I'll bring it up at the next meeting, for the next mayor, about how we can increase trolley efficiency, and maybe that'll help with the permit parking and Main Street project, and might be an ideal trial run to help Ashley out as far as getting a transportation plan. And our local
Placid Express now. They have GPS, it should be.
Not all of them have GPS. Yeah, it should be. And
It has GPS.
we've been talking a couple of years now. Maybe this is the time to really crack the whip.
Talk to Jay.
Right.
Right.
Well, I don't want Mayor to enjoy his last meeting. I'll start to, grind the wheel.
Technology's gotten a lot easier.
I think we should be pursuing it. And with things resuming some semblance of service, this is a good time to put that back on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions of this agreement? If not, I would ask for a motion authorizing the village to execute it. It has already been executed on behalf of Essex County by Dan Palmer.
So move.
Second.
Further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the ayes have it. We'll get this executed and get it back on board. I'd like to say, is there anything else to come before this meeting this evening? But it's a special meeting and we are not permitted to add additional topics to the agenda of items that are approved for this meeting. So with that said, I think a couple of us will be departing this board, and I will say it's a bittersweet moment. These years have flown by, and we've accomplished some major projects in our community, and I think and certainly look forward to the skills that the next board will bring to the table, being able to accomplish some that are in the works but not quite visible yet. So it's a good time to congratulate Art on his run for mayor, and to congratulate Jackie and Mark and welcome them, but also to express sincere appreciation and thanks to you, Scott, for your time on the board and input. I'm sure we're going to be watching with interest how the future goes here. I don't think any of us work at this stuff month after month and just immediately turn the light off. I certainly will remain interested in what's happening here. I have a high interest in seeing the World University Games successfully achieved here in Lake Placid. I can tell you that in other parts of the world we're held on a pretty high pedestal, so we have a tall order to fill, and I'm confident that we're going to do it, and we certainly have tremendous partners in the agreements that have been signed, and there's no doubt in my mind that we're going to have a successful event as long as we get by the pandemic. So with that said, Scott,
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
we have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott.
Are we supposed to give Liz a chance at questions?
Oh,
Or is it not that kind of meeting?
No, I think Liz, if Liz has questions, we're happy to
Only
answer
on the
them.
topics that were part of the meeting.
Oh, okay. I have unrelated questions, so I'll just give you guys a call later. But
Okay.
I did want to say, Mayor Randall, it's been such a pleasure working with you, and I thank you so much for answering my calls over the past couple of months.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity to get good information out into the community, and certainly media, newspapers. I think Anita will tell you the first thing I do when I walk in the mayor's office is grab the local paper to see what's new. So the more you can put in, the more coverage you can provide, the better our community is informed. And certainly on topics of major community interest, I've been following other communities in the police reform in the last few days, and the coverage that your newspaper has provided has been quite extensive, and in each community had a very different characteristic and personality to it and how it came out.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz.
Okay.
Anything else? Any other comment?
Thank you.
If not, thank